I never asked for trouble. All I wanted was peace. Just me, my land, and my animals. I worked hard to buy this farm, a quiet stretch of green just outside the suburbs, where I could grow my crops, raise my cattle, and live life on my terms. But peace, as I'd learned, is a fragile thing. And some people, the ones who believe they own the world, think they can take it from you. I step outside onto my porch, breathing in the fresh morning air. The scent of damp earth and hay settles in my lungs. My bulls, massive and strong, graze lazily in the field, tails flicking at the occasional fly. I check my watch, 6:30 a.m., the best time of day before the world wakes up. I moved out here 2 years ago, away from the noise of the city. Thought it'd be a fresh start. Turns out, no matter where you go, certain people make it their mission to remind you that you don't belong. A few miles down, past the oak trees lining my property, there's a gated neighborhood, an HOA-run monstrosity full of manicured lawns, identical houses, and people who frown at anything that doesn't fit their picture-perfect world. People like me. From day one, I felt their stares. The hushed voices when I walked into town. The polite but forced smiles when I introduced myself. They had questions they didn't ask out loud. How did a man like him end up owning so much land? Why is he here? The HOA president, Karen Whitmore, made it clear she didn't think I fit the aesthetic of her neighborhood. "This area has certain standards," she had told me once, her red lipsticked mouth curled into a rehearsed smile. "We have an image to maintain." That was her way of saying, "You don't belong here." I shrugged it off. Let them clutch their pearls and sip their overpriced wine. I had no interest in their little world. My land was mine, legally and rightfully. That should have been the end of it. But the thing about people like Karen, they don't stop. It started small. HOA letters mistakenly sent to my address, inviting me to meetings I wasn't a part of. Random visits from city inspectors claiming they'd received anonymous complaints about noise, odors, and livestock concerns. Someone even had the nerve to suggest I sell my property, at a reduced price, of course. I ignored it, kept my head down, figured if I left them alone, they'd do the same. Then, one morning, I find something strange. Near the edge of my property, tire tracks cut deep into the soil. Trash, empty soda cans, plastic cups, and picnic napkins litters the grass. I frown. Who the hell has been on my land? A creeping suspicion coils in my gut. I have a feeling this isn't just some careless passerby. No, this smells like Karen. And something tells me she's just getting started. At first, I tell myself it's nothing. Maybe some teenagers cut through my property. Maybe some hikers got lost. It happens. But the next morning, the trash is worse. More cans. More napkins. A plastic champagne flute lying half-buried in the grass. And footprints. Lots of them. Someone's been out here. I kneel, brushing my fingers over the deep impressions in the soil. Not just a few people, this was a group. And they weren't passing through. They were staying. A tightness settles in my chest. This isn't an accident. By the time I reach the edge of my property, my suspicion turns into certainty. Tied to my fence is a single blue balloon, deflated and swaying in the morning breeze. A cheap party decoration, the kind you find at one of those fancy HOA get-togethers. I know exactly who's behind this. Karen Whitmore. She's the kind of woman who thinks the world is her personal country club. She doesn't ask, she expects. And if you tell her no, she just pretends she didn't hear you. I wipe my hands on my jeans and start back toward the house, jaw clenched. I need proof. That evening, I set up a few trail cameras. My land is big, and I can't be everywhere at once, but these cameras? They don't blink. The next morning, I wake up early, heart hammering as I check the footage. And there it is. The video shows a group of people, mostly middle-aged, dressed in pastel-colored outfits, lounging on my land like it's their own personal park. Lawn chairs, picnic blankets, coolers of food and drinks. And right in the center, laughing, toasting a glass of wine. Karen. My stomach twists. She never asked. Never even mentioned it. Just waltzed onto my land with her little friends like they had every right. I gripped the edge of the table, breathing through my anger. This isn't just about a picnic. This is about control. Karen has spent the last 2 years trying to push me out, pretending I don't belong here. Now, she's showing me exactly how little she thinks of my ownership. Because in her mind, I'm not the real landowner. She is. Or at least, someone like her should be. I exhale slowly, forcing myself to think. Confronting her outright won't work. She'll play dumb, act innocent, claim it was just a harmless gathering. No, if Karen wants to play games, I'll play too. But I'll play by my rules. And something tells me she's not ready for what's coming. The next afternoon, I drive into town. I know exactly where Karen will be. HOA meetings are her sacred ritual. Every Wednesday, 3 p.m. sharp, she holds court at the neighborhood clubhouse, surrounded by her little flock of like-minded homeowners. By the time I pull up, they're already inside. Through the glass doors, I see them, polished, prim, and sipping iced tea like they own the world. I step inside. The room hushes. Conversations falter. I recognize a few faces, the same people who've given me tight, wary smiles in the past but never spoken more than a sentence to me. Karen, seated at the head of the long table, blinks in exaggerated surprise. "Oh," she says, smiling that thin, artificial smile. "What a surprise. What brings you here?" I toss a printed still from my trail cam onto the table. The image is clear. Karen, wine glass in hand, smack in the middle of my property. Her smile tightens. "Recognize this?" I ask. My voice is calm, steady, controlled. A few people glance at the image, whispering. Karen lets out a light, practiced laugh. "Oh, this." She waves a manicured hand dismissively. "That was just a little get-together. We assumed that area was public." I arch a brow. "Public? Karen, that's my land." "Well," she sighs dramatically, "it's just so open and unused. It feels like part of the community. I mean, let's be reasonable. It's not like you need all of it." There it is. Not an apology. Not even an excuse. Just a statement. In her mind, my ownership isn't real. My land, my rights, are just an inconvenience. "I don't care what it feels like," I say, my voice sharper now. "Next time you or your friends step onto my land without permission, I'll have you trespassed." That gets a reaction. A ripple of murmurs. Karen tilts her head, still smiling, but there's steel in her eyes now. "Oh dear, let's not be hostile," she says sweetly. "We're all neighbors, after all. No need for threats." I fold my arms. Not a threat. A promise. Her eyes narrow, but she keeps her tone syrupy sweet. "Well, if you're going to be so difficult, I suppose we could always bring this up with the city. Perhaps they'd be interested in reviewing your land use. After all, large animals so close to our community, I'm sure there are regulations to consider." A spike of anger flares in my chest. There it is. The thinly veiled threat. She's doubling down, trying to leverage bureaucracy against me. She thinks she can push me out. I take a slow breath, keeping my expression neutral. "You do that, Karen." I tap the image on the table. "But I suggest you worry about your own legal violations first." Her smile falters just a fraction. "Good." I turn and walk out, ignoring the hushed voices behind me. I don't wait for Karen to make her next move. That evening, I visit Sheriff Coleman. He's an old-school type, one of the few people in town who doesn't treat me like a stranger. I show him the footage. He frowns, nodding as he watches Karen and her group sprawled out on my land. "This enough to press charges?" I ask. He scratches his chin. "Trespassing, definitely. Maybe unlawful gathering. But if they do it again, I can escalate it." He looks at me. "You sure you want to go that route? She'll cause trouble." "She already is trouble," I say. He exhales through his nose. "All right. I'll file a report. But you know how folks like her are. She'll try to spin this, make herself the victim." "I know." I lean forward. "That's why I need to make sure it never happens again." He watches me for a moment, then nods. "You got a plan?" I glance out the window. My bulls graze peacefully in the fading light. Oh yeah, I say. I've got a plan. The sun is barely up when I hear the laughter. Soft at first, then louder, voices carrying on the wind. Clinking glasses. The rustling of feet trampling my grass. I step onto my porch, and there they are. Karen and her little flock have returned. They've set up an entire event this time. Folding tables draped in white linens, elaborate fruit trays, even a portable speaker playing light jazz. The women are sipping mimosas, dressed in pastel sundresses, chatting like they're in a private country club. Like this land belongs to them. I clench my jaw, but I don't rush in. Not yet. I watch. Wait. Then Karen turns, locking eyes with me across the field. She smirks. Smirks. And that's when I realize, this isn't just about entitlement anymore. This is a challenge. She knows exactly what she's doing. I take a slow breath. Fine. Let's play. I walk across the field, boots crunching against the dry grass. The laughter dims as people notice me, eyes darting my way. Some shift uncomfortably. Others, like Karen, don't even bother hiding their smugness. Karen, I say evenly, stopping at the edge of their setup. I believe I made myself clear. Oh, relax, she drawls, swirling her mimosa. We're just having a little brunch. It's such a lovely open space. Why let it go to waste? I glance at the tables, the decorations, the complete disregard for my boundaries. You're trespassing. Her lips curve upward. I spoke with the city. She tilts her head, feigning sympathy. Did you know your land is technically part of a wildlife corridor? That means there are restrictions on what you can do with it. Keeping those big, dangerous animals so close to our community might not be entirely legal. There it is. I fold my arms. So that's your game? You throw a party on my land, and if I complain, you try to get my bulls banned. She gives an exaggerated sigh. Oh, let's not be dramatic. No one is banning anything. We're just discussing safety concerns. After all, what if a child wandered over here and got hurt? I let her words hang in the air. Let her believe she's won. Then I pull out my phone, tap the screen, and hit play. The speaker crackles to life, Karen's own voice, clear as day. It's not like you need all of it. It feels like part of the community. We could always bring this up with the city. Maybe they'd be interested in reviewing your land use. Karen's face drains of color. The other women murmur, shifting in their seats. Some exchange nervous glances. I let the recording play a moment longer before pausing it. Sheriff Coleman found that very interesting, I say. Along with the official trespassing report I filed. Karen forces a tight smile, but I see the flicker of panic in her eyes. Now, she says, voice sugary sweet. There's no need to involve the authorities. Oh, but there is, I say smoothly. See, I had a nice little chat with the sheriff yesterday. He was real interested in this footage. And even more interested in the fact that you're trying to weaponize zoning laws against me. She flinches, just slightly. And guess what else I found? I gesture toward my fence, where my trail cams are still set up. More footage. Today's footage. Of you and your guests trespassing again. The murmurs grow louder. One woman pushes back from the table. Another grabs her purse. Karen's composure cracks. Now listen, she says, her voice sharper. There's no reason to. But I cut her off. No, you listen, I say, my voice cool. You're done playing games, Karen. Either you and your little picnic club pack up and leave, or we let the sheriff handle it. Silence. Karen's jaw tightens, hands clenching at her sides. But she sees it now. The trap has closed. Slowly, stiffly, she turns to the others. Forces a thin, trembling smile. Well, ladies, she says, her voice barely steady. It seems we've overstayed our welcome. One by one, they gather their things, the weight of humiliation pressing down on them. Karen lingers a moment longer, eyes burning with unspoken rage. But she says nothing. And when she leaves, I know, this isn't over. But next time, I won't just be waiting. Karen may have slithered off my land that day, but I knew she wasn't done. People like her never accept defeat. And sure enough, 3 days later, I get a notice from the county zoning board. A formal complaint has been filed against my farm. The claim: my livestock are a public safety hazard and are in violation of community standards. I stare at the letter, jaw tightening. Karen moved fast. But she made a mistake. She thought I wouldn't fight back. She thought wrong. By the time the zoning board hearing rolls around, the meeting room at City Hall is packed. Word has spread, and the tension is thick. On one side, Karen and her HOA loyalists sit prim and proper, acting like this is just a routine civic matter. On my side, a dozen local farmers, ranchers, and even a few town residents who actually respect property rights. I take my seat near the front, arms crossed, waiting. Karen, ever the performer, is called up first. She stands, smoothing down her blazer like she's about to deliver a TED Talk. "Good evening," she says, voice syrupy sweet. "We're here today because of a serious concern regarding community safety. While we deeply respect our neighbors' agricultural lifestyle, we must acknowledge that large, potentially dangerous animals pose a significant risk to families living nearby." She pauses, letting her words sink in, before continuing. "I've personally witnessed these massive bulls wandering near our neighborhood's walking trails. Children play there. Seniors take their morning strolls. Imagine the tragedy if one of these animals got loose." I almost snort. My bulls are behind a 6-foot reinforced fence and haven't once left my land. But Karen's playing the long game, trying to turn my property into a problem for the town. She clasps her hands. "All we ask," she says with a carefully practiced sigh, "is that the board review whether this type of farming is truly compatible with our growing community." Applause ripples from her supporters. She tilts her chin, satisfied. Then the board turns to me. "Do you have a response?" one of the officials asks. I stand, pulling a small flash drive from my pocket. "Yeah," I say, voice steady. "I've got plenty to say." I walk to the front and hand the drive to the technician. A few clicks later, the projector screen flickers to life. The room falls silent as the first clip plays. Security footage. Karen and her group, sipping mimosas, laughing, sprawled out on my land. Then the second clip, Karen at the HOA meeting, smugly threatening to use zoning laws against me. The murmurs start. Then the third clip. A sheriff's deputy, standing outside her home, informing her that she is under investigation for repeated trespassing. Gasps ripple through the room. Someone lets out a low whistle. Karen's face drains. I turn back to the board. "I think it's interesting," I say, slow and deliberate, "that Karen is so concerned about property laws when she and her friends have repeatedly ignored them." I glance at her. I also find it interesting that this zoning complaint was filed immediately after I confronted her for trespassing. Karen stiffens. This is completely irrelevant to the issue at hand," she hisses. I tilt my head. "You sure? Because it looks an awful lot like retaliation." The board members exchange glances. One of them, a man in his 60s, clears his throat. "Mr. Reynolds," he says, turning to me, "has there ever been an actual incident of your livestock causing harm or crossing into residential areas?" "No, sir," I say. "My bulls have never left my property. I've got reinforced fencing and years of safe ranching experience." He nods. Then he turns to Karen. "Do you have any evidence that these animals are a legitimate safety concern?" Karen's mouth opens, closes. For the first time, she looks cornered. Well, it's not just about evidence," she stammers. "It's about potential risks. Surely we can agree that." "You have nothing, Karen," I say, voice cutting through her excuses. Silence. One of her HOA friends tries to interject, but the damage is done. The board chair adjusts his glasses and sighs. Given the lack of evidence, and in light of these troubling new details, I see no reason to pursue this complaint. Karen's face goes pale. "Furthermore," he continues, "we do have reason to believe this complaint was filed in bad faith. That is something we take seriously." Karen shoots to her feet. I was only trying to protect the community." The board chair gives her a look. "By trespassing on private property? By making veiled threats?" Karen sputters, looking around the room. Her allies won't even meet her gaze. The tide has turned. She lost. The chair turns back to me. Mr. Reynolds, we apologize for this inconvenience. Consider this matter dismissed. Karen collapses into her chair, face burning with humiliation. I step back, arms crossed, watching as her world unravels. And it's glorious. The fallout is swift. Within days, Karen's pristine image as the respectable HOA leader crumbles. The county officially dismisses her zoning complaint, citing malicious intent. Worse for her, the footage of her trespassing spreads like wildfire. A local journalist picks up the story, spinning it into a cautionary tale about entitled HOA overreach and abuse of power. The headline, HOA president tries to weaponize local government, gets exposed instead. The article lays everything out: the unauthorized picnic, her threats, the failed zoning attack. Her own words, caught on camera, paint a picture of arrogance and entitlement. Neighbors start whispering. Then they start talking. And soon, they start acting. The HOA board calls an emergency meeting. Karen arrives with her usual smug confidence, expecting damage control. Instead, she walks into a firing squad. Her own people, once her loyal enforcers, are turning on her. "Do you realize what you've done to our reputation?" One of the board members snaps. "We look like power-hungry idiots." "You lied to us," another hisses. "You made it seem like Reynolds was the problem. But you were the one trespassing." A third member, shaking his head, mutters, "This is a PR nightmare." Karen tries to argue, tries to spin it. But the evidence is undeniable. The community has seen her for what she is. By the end of the night, it's unanimous. She's out. Days later, I'm out by the pasture when I see a moving truck pull up to Karen's house. Turns out, public disgrace isn't good for property values. Rumor is, her own husband insisted they sell. Said he was tired of the drama, of the lawsuits piling up, because, oh yeah, a few of her former allies are now suing her for dragging them into her mess. I lean against the fence, watching as she storms outside, barking orders at the movers. For the first time, she looks small. She sees me. Our eyes lock. For a moment, I wonder if she'll say something. An apology. A final desperate insult. But no. She just turns away, shoulders stiff, and disappears into the house. The town feels different after she's gone. People start coming up to me, offering small words of support. Farmers who once kept their heads down now talk more freely about the ways they've been pushed around by HOA bullies. Even some of Karen's former supporters start reconsidering things. I guess I never really thought about how unfair some of the HOA rules are, one woman admits at the farmer's market. Karen made it seem like she was just protecting the neighborhood, but she was really just protecting herself. That's how it always goes, isn't it? People don't see injustice until it's shoved in their faces. But at least now, they're looking. One afternoon, I get a letter from the zoning board. Not another complaint. This time, it's a formal acknowledgement that my land is fully compliant with all county laws. And at the bottom, a personal note from the chairman. "Mr. Reynolds, we apologize for the trouble this caused. You have our full support in maintaining your farm and property rights. Thank you for standing your ground." I chuckle, folding the letter and tucking it in my pocket. Damn right. The sun dips below the hills, casting golden light over the pastures. My bulls graze peacefully, completely unaware of the chaos they inadvertently helped expose. For the first time in weeks, I take a deep breath. My land is mine again. And no one, not Karen, not the HOA, no one, will ever take that from me.